What is that?
Okay, I think we're going to start now. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So everyone, please do mute your microphones. Obviously, as we proceed, there'll be time for some interactions. So we'll be making a request. If you want to say something, just raise up your hands, and the guys will unmute you, and you can proceed. We're hoping to have some good interactions today, and I want to just give a little background. Can everybody hear me okay, though? Yeah?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. I can.
Fantastic.
There I can.
So I'll give a little background, and then I will get on with today's business. So basically, what we're having today is a special webinar, really. And it's a pre-COP26 webinar with a focus on circular solutions. Now, the theme for today's webinar is how can eco-innovation deliver sustainable development in Africa? I think I like people to see my face. There you go. Let's do this. So yeah, the theme for today is how can eco-innovation deliver sustainable development in Africa? And I think the idea is because as we approach the big 2-week event that is COP26, which is the largest gathering of global leaders and partners and associates and researchers, industry folks around this issue of climate change, we're hoping to try to prepare and align ourselves with the topic of the day. Obviously, we know that in an era where there's so much global consensus around sustainability, the agenda of climate change and ultimately the focus of international community in this space is absolutely crucial. Internationally, the success of sustainability frameworks has been dependent around working relationship between public and private sector in many parts of the world, and this remains the case. But the question in Africa is that a challenge? Is it working? With the world uniting to tackle this crisis of climate change, it makes sense for us to pause for a minute, have a think about the role of RECIRCULATE and ACTUATE projects, which is the central project that's brought all of us together, and then together to have a conversation around these. As Africa witnesses an increase in private sector investments, technological development, industrialization, obviously with the pressures from the global pandemic, there is need for high-level national policy considerations and very, very powerful sustainable models that promote eco-innovation for a green economy. And obviously, I think we all agree that research is a principal part at the heart of this. What is COP26 really? For this year's COP event happening in Glasgow in the UK, there's some specific goals, 4 of them to be specific, and they include the fact that they're wanting to get countries to come together, but to kind of put forward some clear ambitions towards meeting or reducing their targets. Obviously aligning with reaching a net zero agenda by the middle of the century. The second big goal for COP26 this year is the need for us to work together to protect and restore ecosystems, build defenses, warning systems, resilient infrastructure, and agriculture to avoid loss of homes, livelihood, and even lives. And obviously, COVID has shown us how fickle life can be. Now, to deliver on our first 2 goals, obviously, there is need for finance. So our third goal is around mobilizing climate finance, I think in at least $100 billion to be able to tackle the climate change. Obviously, that's quite a small amount, but I think ultimately the idea is how can African universities, African governments, African institutions, organizations benefit from this mobilization? What is their say in this subject matter? And ultimately, it's about working together to deliver this agenda. I think there's a focus around finalizing the Paris rule book, which is a detailed rules and regulation that actually makes the Paris Agreement operational. Now, Lancaster is also planning a big COP26 week. And this is actually one of those activities aligning ourselves with the agenda, a global agenda of the day. And I'm also happy to say that Lancaster has been working with Hatto Foundation in the UK, in Ghana, and also with the partnership of Ghanaian government. And we've been allocated a side event, remember, like an African pavilion at COP26 this year, where we'll be speaking about mobilizing climate finance to catalyze climate action in Africa, led by the Ghanaian government. That is scheduled to happen on the 6th of November. And myself and Kirk Semple, my good friend and boss, will be going there alongside some partners from Ghana. Now, Africa is not contributing significantly to climate change. Well, that can be argued. But my point is, but Africa is also receiving the impacts of climate change. It must be clear, however, that eco-innovation plays a very crucial role in tackling this issue, because eco-innovation has the capacity to deliver tools needed for green growth, sustainable development. I think for me, really, for universities and governments and industry to fulfill their roles in aligning with the remit of a carbon neutral world, there must be very high level engagement and management, the strategy to integrate sustainable principles in everything they do. Now, you will obviously appreciate the fact that at the moment, universities engage in this level, either from lecturing or delivering some specific courses on climate change, which is fantastic. But ultimately, are they considering integrating those models within their operations? It's a different thing entirely. But it's worth a consideration, because ultimately, our impacts on climate change should be assessed, and individual organizations should view what their action is towards this global agenda. We do realize that actually universities can also be anchors in co-designing and developing research partnerships that drives sustainable solutions that also reduces the impact of climate change. But I think on top of that as well, there's the element around providing capacity to the next generation, these young ones who will take forward this agenda, the ones who are wondering, well, why can the world leave things as they are when they would suffer the brunt? Okay, so now, on the back of all of this I've said, we have some very powerful speakers today who will give us a sense of their eco-innovation journey. So these are very high-level executives of African partner organizations. But they'll be speaking about what their organization have done with respect to their response to climate change and the whole agenda around eco-innovation and its impact on sustainable development. So but before we get a move on, inviting our speakers for the day, I want to first and foremost call the amazing, the incredible, it doesn't like me doing this, the supersonic, Professor Kirk Semple, to give us a sense of the RECIRCULATE and ACTUATE projects, but from the perspective of COP26, but also an alignment with the climate change agenda. On that note, I want to call Professor Kirk Semple. Over to you, Bob.
Thank you very much, Akan, and once again, a very kind, if a little bit over the top introduction. As usual, you like to embarrass me, don't you? Anyway, yeah, so what I'd like to do before I start is just share my screen. So I'm going to do that now, and hopefully we're in presentation mode. Does that look like presentation mode?
It does, absolutely.
Okay, so yes, as Akan had pointed out, the COP26 Lancaster University Festival is up and running over the next week. And if you're interested in finding out about all the activities that are ongoing, and there are many, and this is one example of it, please check out the website and you can find out about, a lot of information about what's going on over this week, this coming 7 days, but also into the future as well. And as Akan has generously said, my name is Professor Kirk Semple. I'm the director of the RECIRCULATE and ACTUATE projects, but I'm also heavily involved in international engagement activities with African partners, some of whom you will meet today, but also elsewhere in the world as well. So the question for today is, how can eco-innovation deliver sustainable development in Africa? So really, I'm going to come from a sort of particular perspective, because it is linked to the projects that will be talked about through this webinar. But really, waste is a significant problem globally, and I think we're all aware of that. But for the most part, waste is seen as being valueless. It has no value. So the behaviour typically is to throw it away. And in some ways that's done in very controlled ways. In other ways it's done very haphazardly, illegally, where it might be just thrown away into the environment. It may be burnt and so on. But anyway, from an African perspective, or a sub-Saharan African perspective, waste generation, as with other continents, is huge. 62 million tonnes approximately per year. And if we use Ghana as an example, more than 12,000 tonnes of waste per day are generated. Okay, so the issue here is that a large percentage of that waste is actually organic, so it is decomposable or I can't even sell it, processable. So as I said before, some of that is disposed to landfill, it might be burnt, it might be dumped. But the upshot of it all is that through microbial degradation, carbon dioxide and methane are produced, which of course are the so-called greenhouse gases and will impact on the climate, as we know very well. But what we also must be aware of is that there are other impacts to the environment, to surface and groundwaters, and the availability of water for consumption. And of course, contaminated water supply can very much lead to significant impacts to human and environmental health. So, you know, in this scope, we really do need to think about how we reduce these carbon dioxide and methane, so-called greenhouse gas emissions, how we can secure clean and sustainable supplies of water, energy and food, and you know, how we can implement circular solutions through eco-innovation to manage our waste effectively to mitigate some of these significant problems. Now, just to give you an example of carbon dioxide emissions from food waste alone. So if you look at this, we have regional values of carbon dioxide emissions per capita, so that's per head of population in these different regions. And what you very quickly notice is that the most is certainly coming from what we would describe as, you know, the developed world, North America and Oceania, industrialized Asia, and of course Europe. But when you move down the list, of course, you get to Africa and Asia, and of course sub-Saharan Africa. You can see that the values of carbon dioxide that are being produced per capita are considerably lower than further to the left. Okay, so my point here, and Akan already mentioned it, is that, you know, sub-Saharan Africa and other developing countries are not really contributing as much to climate change as the developed world, but they are certainly feeling the impacts, the negative impacts of climate change very acutely through flooding, through extreme weather events, through drought, and so on. So really, the circular economy is one way that we can tackle some of these issues that I've talked about, where we try to manage waste out of activities in society, whether it's industrial, business, or domestically. And the circular economy subscribes to the 4 R's principle: reduce, reuse, recycle, and repair or refurbish. And through eco-innovative approaches, we can actually look to develop new products, processes, interventions, and services that deliver benefits to both society and the environment, and ultimately to mitigate the challenges around climate change. Now, it's important to recognise that this is not a one organisation or a one country activity. It has to be done in partnership and collaboration, and one of our goals has been to develop new partnerships and looking at approaches to enable researchers to grow transformational impact through working with, in, and for their communities. And you know, another important factor here is the consideration, the building in of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So really, how do we do this? And at the heart of this is collaboration, and collaboration through eco-innovation. And one of the driving forces here at Lancaster has been the Centre for Global Eco-Innovation, which has driven partnerships within the university and within the research environments, but also with other sectors outside of university research. So the private sector, small to medium-sized enterprises, and how that links to government and policy, and of course, how all of these activities can be embraced by civil society and the communities that we're trying to help. And at the heart of all of this is this notion of equitable partnerships. Everybody has a voice, everybody has a contribution to make through co-design, co-development and co-delivery. And most recently, thinking globally, but actually working locally. And this place-based approach to collaboration is absolutely crucial for success. So really, relating to impact and the challenges that I've talked about, you know, we talk about the valorization of organic wastes, how we can actually add value to organic wastes to produce feedstocks for bioenergy, how we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and how we can improve human and environmental health. Now, with regard to bioenergy, and this is at the heart of some of the projects that we're going to hear about today, it offers a sustainable alternative to hydrocarbons, so oil and gas. It takes pressure off deforestation as an alternative fuel source from biomass, from wood, from charcoal. Bioenergy is clean and carbon neutral. Okay, so these are all very, very important factors. And of course, bioenergy produces waste, which can contribute to soil health and well-being and fertility. It can contribute to irrigation. And of course, it can also offer up a sustainable alternative to energy-intensive and environmentally damaging nitrogen and phosphorus-based fertilizers. So how does it look? So very, very simplistically, we take our waste, we collect it, we feed it into bioenergy to produce energy-rich products such as biogas or bioethanol or whatever it might be. The waste products from that process can be used in irrigation, clever irrigation systems, but also as a soil conditioner or sustainable fertilizer to produce nutritious and sustainable food crops. And then, of course, the waste from that, I'm going the wrong way, the waste from that can feed back into this virtuous cycle or circular economy. Now, the two projects that are really important in driving this are the RECIRCULATE and the ACTUATE projects. Now, the RECIRCULATE project is massive. It's £7 million of funding from the British government to work with key partners in sub-Saharan Africa, and you're going to hear from those partners today. But also the genesis, if you will, of the ACTUATE project, where we took the science and technology from the research from RECIRCULATE and actually operationalized it to build demonstrators in Ghana and Nigeria. So really, using these eco-innovative thinking and processes, we're hoping to develop solutions which challenge the issues around climate change and then environmental degradation through the circular economy paradigm, but particularly within the wastewater, sustainable energy and food security nexus. And collaboration with our African colleagues across universities and research centres through private and policy sector stakeholders is absolutely crucial. But also is how we engage with communities that benefit from this, and particularly with the young bright minds at school and university, and also the young entrepreneurs through capacity building to look to develop this into something that is sustainable in an entrepreneurial sense, which attracts future investment and commercialization opportunities. So through that's how we will hopefully deliver the impact. You know, through this notion of engagement and knowledge exchange, through the building and implementation of demonstration projects, processes, interventions, and technologies, how we engage with young people to deliver cultural and generational change through these change makers, and of course entrepreneurial approaches as well to add value to waste, to add value and develop clever technologies and interventions, and to make business opportunities through that. So I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to hand back to Akan just shortly, but what I'm very excited about is the presentations, the case studies that are going to be delivered by my colleagues. So Francis, Patricia, Lawrence and Cynthia, all of whom I've known for a very long period of time now, and who are intrinsically and importantly involved in leading projects in Ghana and Nigeria, principally here. Very, very exciting indeed. So I'm going to finish there. I'm going to thank you for your time and your attention, and I'm going to hand back to Akan now. So thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you very much. I think I'm going to put on there's an echo from mute on space. Thank you. Good. So I'm going to put you on this podcast. So obviously, you've kind of enumerated. I think I wanted to just ask this question for emphasis, really. So we have RECIRCULATE as a project and then Actuate as a follow-on project. Could you maybe some more specific term highlight the alignment of those projects with the whole climate change discussion? I know you've spoken about it, but for emphasis, because obviously it's a pre-COP26 seminar, and obviously some people were just joining us as we were speaking. So I want you to kind of emphasize very clearly the RECIRCULATE project and Actuate projects are UK government-funded projects, and we're working with African partners for over 30 years now. In specific terms, how are they aligned with the whole climate change agenda?
So I think as I sort of highlighted, climate change is with us. We're all worrying about it, and we need to look to how we're going to reverse or at least stop what's going on. Obviously, issues around greenhouse gas emission is important. The so-called carbon dioxide, the NOx compounds, methane, they all are contributing significantly to that. And a lot of that is coming from issues around hydrocarbon use, so the oil and gas sector, which are producing massive amounts of carbon dioxide. We think about the pressures on land and the forests of the world, and how in some countries those are seen as a resource for cooking, for heating, for building, etc., etc. And of course, the combustion of those, the use and combustion of those forests, of course, removes a mechanism which can actually be used to absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So by offering up waste as an alternative source of energy, it's clean compared to hydrocarbons. It's also carbon neutral, of course, as well. Means that ultimately it is not positively, or depending on your perspective, negatively impacting upon gaseous emission and climate change. I think the other thing to say is that we need fertilizers for food production. There is absolutely no doubt about that. But the energy that's required to produce nitrogen-containing fertilizers, inorganic fertilizers, is huge. Okay, it needs a lot of energy. The Haber-Bosch process is extremely energy intensive, and phosphate rock, and therefore phosphate fertilizers, is a finite resource, just like hydrocarbons. But so extracting them from the ground is not only energy intensive, but it's also extremely damaging to the environment as well. So we have to be looking for ways to offset that, to change that thinking as well. And through this circular economy that I've described, that could take pressure off of those processes. Now, there are all sorts of complexities around addition of fertilizers to soils that may enhance the production of carbon dioxide, for example, and that is something that I haven't really got much time to go into now, but it is something that we have to be aware of as well. So it's very, very complex, and I've got just a really quite a niche part of that, but it's highly relevant.
Thank you very much. I think we can get on with the other speakers of the day. So what's going to happen actually? The way it's been designed, because I know that there are other partners and personalities from different organizations. So we designed this to become like a showcase webinar where different institutions will talk about their eco-innovation journeys and its relationship with climate change, the climate change agenda. So I'm going to call different leads and heads of different organizations to take this topic by the horns, really. So the first person I want to call is a good friend, Dr. Francis Bartenga Jr. Now, Francis is the director of the Institute of Industrial Research at the Council for Scientific Industrial Research in Ghana. And he will be speaking about eco-innovation for sustainable development in Africa, a case study of his institute. Over to you, Francis.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
I hope you can see my screen.
Very, very clearly. You can proceed.
Excellent, excellent. I'm Francis Boateng Agyenim, the director of CSIR Institute of Industrial Research, and also the lead for both RECIRCULATE and ACTUATE in Ghana. But my presentation will be restricted to the eco-innovation CSIR Institute of Industrial Research journey to sustainable development. In terms of content, I will put in context what the risks are in Ghana when it comes to climate. I will make mention of RECIRCULATE and ACTUATE projects in Ghana and also put it in context on how it relates to the government policies and the development in Ghana. I'll provide some CSIR reflections. These are not necessarily my opinions, but what we think about RECIRCULATE and ACTUATE. And I've got about 7 points that I will talk about. And we have also taken advantage of the RECIRCULATE and ACTUATE projects and have introduced or we're also doing some works which we think complement the RECIRCULATE and ACTUATE and in context the eco-innovation school in our institute. And finally, I will talk about the challenges and opportunities and the chance that we'll be able to connect some dots. So let me put in context, Ghana's climate risk, according to the World Bank 2021, is that water, agriculture, energy, forestry and natural resources, and human health are the sectors that will be severely affected by climate change. And if you look at RECIRCULATE and ACTUATE critically, it covers all these 5 areas. So it means that the project is very, very important to Ghana, and I will stress on this as we go along. In particular, let me talk about water, since the central theme of the presentation or of ACTUATE and RECIRCULATE is water and energy. Intensity of water scarcity in Ghana and the drought cases are supposed to increase or are predicted to increase. The rainfall pattern, anyone who has been in Ghana or in most part of West Africa these days realize that there is rainfall in December, which never happened when we were growing up. So rainfall pattern has changed completely. Temperatures in terms of history has increased by 1 degree Celsius since 1960. And the business as usual projection is that it will increase by 1 to 3 degrees Celsius by the mid-century. And if nothing is done about it, by the turn of the century, we'll be having an increase of between 2.3 and 5.3%. So that is the essence, or that is the essence or the basis of what we are doing here. And let me also mention or give you the overview of Ghana's nationally determined contribution accounting. In 2016, Ghana was emitting about 90 megatons of carbon dioxide annually. And business as usual predicts is that this will be increasing to 74 megatons carbon dioxide if nothing is done about it. Let me save your ears. If we continue to do what we are doing in terms of recirculate and actuate and escalate it, then we have every chance of contributing to reducing this and ending up with what we call the adjusted 2020 NDC emissions to 46 megatons of carbon dioxide. And if you look at this, we have got the ITMOS, which is one of the very important ones in relation to carbon credit, which is one of the things that in future we should be looking at the amount of carbon dioxide that we are saving from recirculate and actuate, in my opinion. CSIR, in my institute, we have 112 staff with 16 PhD, 26. At the moment, we have about 6 new technology demonstrators, and it can be said that out of these, 2 or 3, I think 3 of them are directly linked one way or the other to actuate and recirculate. So let me give you just a short background. I'm not going to go into details of the recirculate since Professor Kirk has given us a good background. And I hope my good friend Lawrence will also be giving us some good information on recirculate and actuate. What we have done is we have done some GIS mapping of a suburb in Accra. We've mapped houses to toilets. We've repaired and rehabilitated drains. More importantly, we have tracked the journey of water, intending to validate what we call the last 100 meters contamination, developed by one of the great scientists on the recirculate team, Professor Manoj Roy. We've installed toilet facilities, tracked incidents of diarrhea, trained adolescent group as wash change agents, and we've also installed rain gauge to monitor weather patterns. These are some of the pictures to demonstrate what has been done. And Actuate, in summary, has also taken from the output from recirculate, has installed a treatment plant to handle school waste in one of the basic schools in a suburb in Accra. The waste comes from both school campus and people's homes. There's gas generated, and let me quickly move to show the pictures. There's gas generated that goes to the lab at the school. So waste segregation bins are provided to the school, gas is generated, and then it is piped to the labs for experiments to demonstrate that the waste is not filthy, but waste is wealth. Again, let me put it in context in terms of the Ghana or the national context. If you look to the extreme right here, the 4th column, you will see some of the flagship projects the current government is implementing. And if you look at what we have done in terms of recirculate and actuate, we have contributed, or we will be contributing significantly to planting for foods and jobs, which is one of the government's flagship projects, because we are generating fertilizer out of this, and we are developing other methods, saving water to plant food. But most importantly, it was the intention of Ghana government to make Accra the cleanest city in Africa. I hope my friend Akan will will be thinking that, oh no, they should be Lagos. No, it's Accra.
Interesting.
We intend to make Accra the cleanest city in Africa. And I think Recirculate and Actuate have got a significant role if we are to employ the methods that we have developed already. So let me now jump to some of the reflections from the projects. More often than not, we talk about the projects without talking about the financials. There's been some critical funding to support research, which in my opinion, would not have been possible, or probably the Ghana government would not have provided these funds for us to do. So the critical funding to support research in circular economy is really very important. And in addition to this, few key equipment which we have procured could also go along to support the sustainability of whatever we are developing. And this, I must acknowledge this because it is very, very important. We often talk about the research outputs, but not talk about the fact that some funds are coming from some people's taxes to support the development of methods to help with the circular economy. The second one, which Professor Kirk made mention of, is the paradigm shift that we are beginning to witness. And that has to do with reclassification and redefining waste as not being filthy, but being wealth. And indeed, for work package 2 and 3 that we lead in Ghana, redefining waste to health, in my opinion, we should be thinking about it now as not just water for health, but also waste to health, which is very, very important. Work package 3, we have tried to improve organic food production through fertilizer provision, which my colleague Patricia will speak about later in the webinar. The third very important thing that we have witnessed with the Actuate and Recirculate is the community participation. Really very incredible cooperation. And I must stress this. We had worked with community before. We have done a lot of work with community, but Actuate and Recirculate has taken the cooperation to a different level. So some of the comments that you hear from the community, or we got to know from the community at the beginning during the training, showed that we need to do far more. And in my opinion, Actuate and Recirculate has done a lot in terms of community. And the ownership, the sense of ownership, in my opinion, is also beginning to improve. Gone were the days when systems were installed in communities and the only thing that the community will be keen on is when it is finished, it is done. And nobody is following it up and the project goes to waste. No, this time around, the sense of responsibility, if you go to the schools, if you go to the communities that we have worked with, in my opinion, it has improved very, very significantly. The research that we have conducted has been demand-driven, and the capacity that we have built, not only in CSIR, Institute of Industrial Research. If you come to CSIR, we can extend it to 3 other institutes, minimum, and even all the 13 different institutes because of set. In CSIR alone, we have had over 40 staff trained in terms of entrepreneurship and the residencies in Lancaster. Design has been done with community, the integration of technical web packages, working with the community, data management training. These all have provided us with important resources for replication and upscaling of project ideas in future. And I believe some of the outputs from CSIR, from the RECIRCULATE and ACTUATE projects are just so many that at some point you get confused as to which one to start with, because each of them can make really significant impact in our society. Publicity improvement of CSIR. I am sure that my colleague Richard will could be having a different name in the community. Probably, who knows, maybe they now call him RECIRCULATE, because RECIRCULATE and ACTUATE have become so important and being very, very public. So, thinking about what happens beyond the project KPIs, let me say that because of the strengthened international and regional partnerships, we have ended up with new co-developed products, interventions, and processes which were not thought about at the beginning of the project. For example, through one of the project partners, Mr. Manoj or Dr. Manoj, we ended up with CSE in India, and we have come together to develop an integrated wastewater and fecal sludge management document for Ghana, a draft guideline document that has been submitted to our minister to show how we can manage wastewater and fecal sludge in Ghana. This was not part of the KPI, but through the through the collaboration, we have developed something on the side. So I'll call this the byproducts of RECIRCULATE and ACTUATE. At the start of the project, we did not have what we call Industrial Innovation Hub. And CSIR, Institute of Industrial Research, has now established an Industrial Innovation Hub similar to what Lancaster Environmental Center runs, that we have 4 different companies that sit with us here in the same room, big room, share ideas with research scientists, and we support the private companies with 3 things. We support them with research, product development, and quality assurance. And just recently, one of the companies, this is just new, one of the companies that assembles car in Ghana, it's a local company called Kantanka, has approached us to take a seat at our place and to work with him in supporting him to develop a 20,000-acre land, both for agriculture and also for processing of agricultural products in Ghana. So, I mean, some of the new products and interventions, processes and services coming up are just amazing. Of all these, let me summarize the last important thing that is very dear to my heart, and that is the business potential of the methods that we have developed. The possibility of generating power and decentralizing electricity to community for their development. The fact that fertilizer compost is a byproduct of RECIRCULATE and ACTUATE. The amount of people or jobs that we can create at the rural communities if these are to be implemented on a wider scale. The health benefits of reducing incidence of diarrhea and cholera and malaria. The sanitation improvement, the fact that we'll be freeing energy for industrial development, the number of benefits that we can get if we upscale, recirculate, and actuate, and the business opportunities is so enormous. I cannot enumerate all. So in doing this, let me also take just about 3 minutes to make mention of some complementary projects.
You don't have 3 minutes, Francis. You only have one.
Oh, okay, super. Some wonderful projects that we are trying to do alongside this, and has to do with community-based power generation with the same principle of solar combined with waste to energy. And this is being constructed at the moment, and it is in the Ashanti region of Ghana, 200 kilowatts solar, 100 kilowatts biogas, and 100 kilowatts pyrolysis plant, which is near completion. There is one that we are supporting, develop various methods to support the use of organic fertilizer to plant food. There is one that we are using municipal solid waste in the circular economy to support sustainable development and use them for the pavement of roads. This is sponsored by the UNDP. We have practiced what we call zero waste disposal community, where no waste leaves the compound. The plastics that come from what we generate are now being used for different things. 30 seconds still in. Conversion of heat from incinerator for energy. And let me finish it off with 30 seconds, and that has to be looking beyond the project. I think we have developed so many methods. I get confused over the potential of the methods that we have developed. The next stage in our development, in my opinion, is how we connect the dots. How do we make use of the staff capacity that we have built, the research methods that we have developed, and the international networks that we have created? How do we put all this together? And that is the big challenge that we have for recirculate and actuate in the eco-innovation space. Thank you very much. And these are the partners and collaborators who have supported in the development of our eco-innovation in Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis. Absolutely fantastic. I would imagine many people have got many questions to ask. I'll just tell you to just hang on a bit. I'm going to call on our next speaker very quickly because we are running kind of short of time at the moment. I'm going to call on Engineer Dr. Patricia Oteng-Darko. Now, she's going to speak about eco-innovation for sustainable development in Africa, a case study of the Crop Research Institute. Her perspective will be from an agricultural point of view, obviously because of our institute. And she has a very powerful case study to present. After that, there's going to be some interactions with everybody. So keep your questions. You can also leave your questions in the chat section. I'll pick them up and direct them to each of the speakers. Over to you, Patricia. Thank you very much. Thanks, Francis. That was absolutely fantastic.
Hello, Akan. Thank you very much. Can you see my screen now?
It's not coming up yet.
Just a few minutes.
Maybe still loading then.
Right.
Or do you want Alan to share? It's coming up now. There you go. Fantastic.
Okay, you have it now?
Yes, we do. Please proceed.
Okay, right. Thank you. So just like my boss, Dr. Agyenim did, I'll be presenting the case for CSIR Crop Research Institute, some of the technologies that we have been developing in response to becoming eco-innovative. And so far, what we have been doing with Recirculate, and then some of the advances that we have made so far. I'll give a very brief introduction to the food system in Ghana. Previously, I will say previously because just like Dr. Agyenim explained, things are changing a bit, and we are hopeful that we would move from this linear system that I'll be explaining to the very circular system that we think can give us a very sustainable production. So previously, our food system was very linear. We were moving from production to supply to consumption. Along the way, there are some changes, but I'm talking about the major values here. So along these chains that we have here, from production to supply to the consumption, we have been generating a whole lot of waste. And just like has already been said, this waste, we couldn't see it as with all the value that it comes with, and it was just going as waste. This is waste. So nothing was being done about it, and this was going to waste. And alongside, we also started experiencing environmental issues. Dr. Agyenim has talked about the increasing temperatures, the drought, intermittent droughts, the flooding that we are experiencing, and all sorts of other issues that are arising as a result of climate change. Previously in this system also, the whole system was, the focus of the system was on production. When I say production, most of this system, for example, if a farmer wants to produce, this farmer is not even looking at the demand for the crop or whatever you want to produce. You just take any crop at all, produce it with the hope that you get supply and a market for it. But currently, our system is changing. And it's changing into a more circular, eco-innovative system, as I have simplified here. So we have the demand, which pushes the production, and then to the supply, then to the consumption, and some to export as well. But along this chain where we are experiencing the waste, we are also repackaging this waste, reprocessing the waste and repackaging it, and taking it back into our production system, some as fertilizer, some as biogas, some as wastewater for irrigation, and all other sorts. So I must say that we are moving, not at a very fast pace, though slow, we are still moving towards a very linear and resource-efficient circular economy. So CSIR crop research over the years, we have been generating technologies to reach out and address some of these challenges that we see here. So we have been addressing challenges with biotic and abiotic stresses. We have developed crop varieties that are high yielding to meet the issue of productivity. We have developed technologies to reduce post-harvest losses along all the chains that I described. We are trying to improve soil fertility, mostly with organic amendments, because we don't want to be contribute to climate change anymore. We are increasing the amount of nutrients that we find in our food. For example, we are breeding for provitamin A and nutrients dense foods, and promoting some of these technologies that we have. Central to all of this is the capacity building. We are building the capacity of our staff, and we are also building the capacity of other stakeholders along the chains that we work with. And I'll talk about some of these things later on. So when we come to plant breeding, we have developed over 150 improved crop varieties. And these crop varieties have the following attributes. Some are very high yielding, drought tolerant. We have already been informed about the increasing temperatures, the droughts that are recurring, and the fact that sometimes even in the midst of the growing season, we get intermittent droughts along the way. So some of these varieties that we have developed are able to resist these conditions and still come out with some appreciable yield for the farmer and also to consumption. We have early maturing varieties that if you should plant within the shortest season, you should also get some very appreciable yield to also escape the droughts for you to come out with very good yields as well. We have some crops that are being developed based on their nutritional qualities. For example, we are promoting the quality protein maize. We know maize and cassava is one of the main staples of the country. So we have retrogressed some of these genes that are giving us more of these vitamins and nutrients into our food systems. I must say that with regards to the circular economy that we have been talking about, the key components of the whole process is the 4 R's, where we need to reduce, we need to reuse, we need to recycle, and we need to refurbish. I must say that before Ghana began speaking the language of eco-innovation, the Crop Research Institute was already working on eco-friendly and environmentally sustainable production systems. And one of these systems is the SAWA technology. This system is mostly for rice, lowland rice production, and is characterized by firm bands. If you know about rice production, we know that we band the basins to contain the water and the nutrients within these basins, so that we get effective irrigation systems and then effective nutrient application to our ponds. So this is one of the systems that was developed in collaboration with JICA, and it has been in existence for a while. Even with the introduction of the alternate wetting drying that was introduced in collaboration with the RECIRCULATE, funded by the GCRF projects, we are still using the SAWA technology in conjunction with the alternate wetting and drying. So when it comes to alternate wetting and drying of rice, here we are trying to reduce water usage. We are also trying to reduce the emissions of CH4, methane, and methane is one of the gases that contribute significantly to climate change. So even with these two issues being addressed, we are contributing significantly to reducing climate change effects, and also to make the production system quite resilient with regards to our farmers. So what we are doing here when it comes to alternate wetting and drying is to monitor the water levels of the field such that we don't overwater the rice fields, and also get very good utilization of any amount of nutrients that is applied to the field. So we monitor the levels of the water to a certain level before applying any other additional water. And this is what we call the alternate wetting and drying. And with this system, we have a very simplified monitoring equipment that can be done by any farmer anywhere. If you have access to any tube at all, it could be a drinking water bottle that you perforate and put into your field for the monitoring, and you are good to go. And you can imagine the amount of water you are going to save, the amount of cost you are reducing in terms of your production cost. When I talk about production cost, especially with regards to irrigated cost, where if you are paying for water, now you have a reduction in the amount of water that you used. If you are buying diesel for your pumps, now you are not continuously buying the diesel, but you are reducing how much diesel is being used to pump water into the field. So the economic returns of this particular technology is enormous. We continue with the partial root zone drying, where we are also working in collaboration with the RECIRCULATE project. And here, the underlying principle is to reduce the amount of water that is being applied to the field. And in so doing, we have improved nutrient use significantly. We have reduced the production cost, just like I said, for the AWD. If you are buying diesel, if you are paying for water, a significant reduction in these costs is quite beneficial to the farmer and the environment as well. Now we have another system that we call the Aquaponics-Based food systems. And central to this is fishing. You would ask why, as a crop-based institute, we are into fishing. Yes, we are not into fishing. We are using this integrated system to support our production of crops. So this system, the effluent from the fish ponds are recycled back into the fields, or even to feed animals, recycled into animal feed, to feed some animals. We can see poultry here. We can see some worms being reared, some small ruminants, and then the byproduct from the poultry, that is the litter and the manure, is also composted and taken back to the fields. After the harvest, some of the crop is also recycled into animal feed to feed the poultry and the fish. So we almost have a zero wastage system when it comes to this particular technology that we are also promoting. With soil and crop nutrition, we have had a very good introduction of digestate into our system. And this has been reintroduced to us by the RECIRCULATE projects. So with the PRD technologies and the AWD technologies that we have been developing in conjunction with our 3 sister-based institutes, the Industrial Research, Institute of Industrial Research and Water Research Institute, we have been able to introduce digestate into our farming system as the nutrient of choice. And with digestate being organic, we don't think that we are going to experience much. That is why we are doing this basic research at this stage to come out with supporting details, supporting data to be able to promote the use of digestate in our farming system. We have been using compost, we have been using green manure and animal manure. We have introduced severally nitrogen fixing crops into our system. And then there is also the crop livestock integration, where we rear crops on the same paddock or field that is being used to produce crops. So in so during the production season, you house your animals, and then when the production is over, you leave them to roam the fields, eat the litter, take up the biomass that is left on the field, or you can build a lot of this biomass and also keep it as feed for the animals when they are housed. On the ecological front, we have been conducting research into conservation tillage, biochar application, intercropping, and use of cover crops. Though we don't have much land to do fallow cropping as it is now, we are still promoting some aspects of fallow cropping. With regards to climate change effects, some of these farmers are losing crops. So we are trying to build their capacities to diversify their crop production and also consider some other emerging crops as well, and not be solely focused on some of their traditional crops. And then we are also promoting the use of aeroponics and hydroponics for high value crops. I cannot talk about what we do without capacity building and policy. We have been advocating for public and private investments into some of these technologies that we have been developing. And most often our mandates end when we develop the technologies. So it's up to the private partners to pick up this technology. And I must say that we commend the RECIRCULATE project for introducing to us the idea of co-design and co-implementation, because we have realized that if you go this way, by the time you are done developing the technology, it would have been picked up by a private partner who would also push this technology to the farmers and make it work to come out with the best possible effect that we were envisioning. We are also speaking to policy by developing policy briefs, advising our ministers and government on some of these innovations and the way to go when it comes to the circular economy. We are advocating for support for research that would help us to develop more of these technologies and promote it for a very sustainable environmental issue. We are also building the capacities of our actors. We are building the capacities of students who we know the next generation. We are building the capacities of our farmers, who are one of our main stakeholders, and we are also building the capacities of our staff. And this has been supported immensely by the RECIRCULATE projects, where we have been able to build the capacities of so many of our staff. We have been able to train them in Lancaster and in other institutions as well. And we have been able to garner the knowledge that is required to conduct some of the research that is needed to push forward.
Can you wrap up, please?
I'm almost done, I can.
Thank you.
So in conclusion, what I'm trying to say is that eco-innovation is excellent for Africa. And sometimes we don't understand why we did not take the bull by the horn, and we are just going slow and on such a movement that we don't even see the end. But I'm happy to say that once started, even though we are not moving so fast, I'm sure that we will move and we would get there. Thank you very much. I must appreciate our project partners and our donors. Thank you very much, Akan.
That's a lot of work you guys have done, seriously. From an institutional perspective, the element of research, your engagement with community, doing not just research, impactful research that is targeted at solving practical problems in the agricultural space, but also the impact of that on the climate change discussion over there. I wonder if anybody has any questions to ask Francis and Patricia in the room, please. Any question before I move to the next set of speakers? I'm hoping we can have some Mentimeter engagements very briefly. Before I do that, I want to open the room up to any questions or any, if you like, any feedback, any comments or remarks from anybody. And to be honest, if there's nobody doing that, I will be calling on people to say something. So get ready. Because I think what it presented is quite powerful. There's a lot of work being done, and obviously, but it requires institutional engagement at that level for this sorts of work to be done. So anybody in the room, please. Can you raise your hands if you have a question or if you have a comment or remark before we continue? Is Ian in the room at all? I was going to ask him a question, actually. Is Ian in the room? I don't think he is. Okay. Hold on. Anybody raising their hands for any question? I can't see any hands being raised.
Yeah, I've just seen one from Sam.
Okay,
So
who's the person? Can we put him through, please?
Yeah.
Or how? Sam,
Hello?
yes. Go on, Sam. We can hear you. Go on, please.
Right. That was two fantastic presentations by Francis and Patricia. My question goes to Dr. Francis. Okay. So this is a lighter one. Next time, Dr. Francis, when you mention NDC, you mention MPP too. But looking at the projects at Medina, which seeks to address the waste energy system, beyond Actuate or beyond the projects, are there plans to replicate it in other schools or upscale it? Or when the project is done, that should be all? It's only done at Medina and then it ends there?
Oh, that's a good question. Francis.
Okay. Thank you, Sam, for the question. Okay, let me give you a bit of background of the NDC and then the MPP. NDC is a political party and MPP is a political. These are the two political parties in Ghana. But coincidentally, nationally determined contribution has the same initials as one of the political parties. And that is why Sam is asking that if I mention NDC, I should mention MPP.
So people should know that a political dimension.
Yes, okay. To upscale Actuate, yes, I think there are several plans, and I don't want to preempt the what we have done so far, but we've already put in document. We are putting document together, and we'll be presenting this to our minister to tell the minister that yes, this is what we have done with our partners, and our intention is that we should be giving more schools to do this. And actually, we started yesterday. Yesterday, we were in one of the secondary schools to present to them beans, to show them how to do. If you are a Ghanaian, you will know PRESEC, one of the top schools in the secondary schools in Ghana. PRESEC, Achimota, and Accra girls were there yesterday to present to them waste beans, which is the start of how we did it in Umar bin Harbin. So we are intending to do this not only at the basic schools, but also to escalate it to the secondary schools. And already we have started that. And we'll also be doing it alongside presenting a document to our minister, because we are developing a policy on this, and we'll be presenting it to the minister for onward submission to cabinet. Actually, we're not taking it lightly. We already have a small amount that together with Professor Kirk and the team, we will be writing a cabinet memo on how we can escalate this to all the schools. So yes, we have got big plans, and we need your support, Sam. Thank you.
Fantastic. And I must say, frankly,
Fantastic.
you better do it now, because I can assure you, this young people, you've seen how brutal they're becoming military. But I think because ultimately the safety of the planet, I mean, they will be the ones who's going to, they'll face all the repercussions and all the damages being done internationally. So I like the idea of within projects, you are considering the sustainability element, a legacy, and you are engaging this young community. But I think that's also happening in Nigeria. But I will leave that for the Nigerian folks to present when it comes to that point. Now, what I want to do now quickly is, I want to kind of have a quick interaction with the room, something a bit more generic. So I'm going to ask it in form of Mentimeter questions. So I want Alan, please, can you load it up? First set of questions. Very, very simple questions, but I want to just get a feel for the room. So the idea is click on the link on the chat section of the call and just respond to the questions there. And then we can see the responses real time on the screen. The first question is quite straightforward. Because people talk about eco-innovation, and it sounds like a very big word, but in your mind, based on what you've heard so far, are there other words or phrases that are synonymous to this, or other words you think, just to get a feel for the room? Or which other words you've heard of or known or worked on that is similar in a sense to the eco-innovation as a word, because it's what the theme of today's webinar is. Let's hear some words flying through. I like that. So there's somebody saying green growth, sustainable development. Anything else coming to your mind? Words that have been thrown about, because I mean, people come up with words all the time, but probably intimately, they probably mean the same thing. So Michael is saying create smart circular self-contained systems. Somebody is saying health. Any other words coming through, friends? Okay. Eco-friendly, I like that. Clean technology. Waste to wealth. Fantastic. Green innovation. I like it. Any more words coming through? Let's see. Okay, so someone is saying wealth to wealth, and that is Boateng. Michael H says create smart circular systems. Gilbert says clean production. Michael H again says organic modeling rather than classical empirical modeling. My goodness, Michael, you're gonna have to explain that, my friend. That sounds very, very, very powerful. Organic modeling rather than classical empirical modeling. Sam says green economy, green innovation. I think just to get a feel, there are many words that describe the agenda of the day. Let's move to the next question, if we may, please. Second question is, so it's a bit of a you know, I would call like a trick question, but let's get a feel for the room. And the question is very simple. Now, you've heard about all these new changes and dimensions and the need for policy, the need for changes through the production of new green goods and services, the whole agenda around eco-innovation. But the question is, well, who is most responsible in your mind to make eco-innovation happen in African countries? Who do you think? Who is most responsible to make it happen? I think somebody's saying the people. Well, I get that. I know it's obviously the people, and everyone is, but that's why I use the word most responsible? Everybody is responsible. But in your mind, considering the African continent, African countries, who do you think is most? The key word there is most. I understand everybody is responsible, but who do you think is the most responsible to make it happen? Or maybe you could reverse it. You could say, who is the reason why it hasn't happened yet? So it's almost the reverse. So it's another way of looking at the question. Who do you think is the reason that it hasn't happened yet? Which actor in particular? So I think one person is saying universities. I'll be happy to know who that is. I hope it's not somebody from industry blaming the universities. Francis, looking at this, Francis, what do you think? Is that making sense to you from what people are saying on this screen? What do you think? Very quickly.
Yes, I think I can understand what people think about our government, that the government should take the lead. But I also believe that although the government sets the enabling environment for this to happen, it should be the local communities. And if we should take a cue from what Professor Semple said, think what globally and act locally. So but I believe that.
The question therefore would now be, can communities actually make anything happen if they don't have the support from government? I guess that people might consider. So for example, Cynthia says government, and I'm going to ask her why she's chosen government when she comes to our talk. And Barton says local communities. I understand that. Doris says university. It's a kind of diversified view, but it's a strong preference towards government. So I'm asking you, I know you're saying local communities, but do you think they can actually make anything happen if the government don't intervene? What do you think, Francis?
I think let's go back to what we have done with RECIRCULATE and ACTUATE.
Okay.
I don't think we relied on the government to start something.
To happen.
And we have had some impacts. So if we begin to initiate and do this in the local communities, the government will have no other choice but to come and align.
Okay, I see your point. So if you can,
it's not top down. It should be
bottom up. I see your point.
Bottom up. Yes.
Okay, so when the impact is there and the government, local communities are kind of integrated into this process and they're driving it, then it's easier for the government to make it happen for a much more sustainable and enhanced impact. Okay, I see your point. Next question, please. So next question is, so obviously we're speaking about these incredible things that can happen fundamentally, but I guess the point is, so what is the most important driver then to make it happen? So now we've considered the actor to make it happen. How about the driver? And the options here are funding, policy, research, talent, and skills. Now, I would imagine all these are important. But again, the key word here is most important driver. And I think I'll be asking Patricia to respond to what she sees on the screen as one of our previous speakers. Patricia, what do you think? So right now, policy seems to be topping. But I would imagine policy would top if government topped earlier on. But let's see what's happening. I think funding now is coming up nicely. Patricia, I want to come back to you and ask you, what do you think? So, but interestingly, it's also okay, folks, to actually say something else you think is an important driver. So, for example, Bartenga said innovation. And Cynthia said attitude. Cynthia, are you on the call? Could you explain very briefly why have you said attitude? What do you mean by that? Cynthia.
Sorry, yes, I'm here. I was just trying to find my screen. Can you hear me?
Very clearly, yes.
Yes. Well, I think that attitudes towards eco-innovation, positive attitudes, or are important. And you can have all the money you want, you can have all the resources, government can pull their hair out, we can have all the research. But if people don't have the right attitudes towards developing or engaging in eco-innovation, it's not going to happen. And I think that is part of Africa's problem, not because they don't care. I don't think there's a sense of urgency at the moment. I don't feel that sense of urgency.
So Nigel actually agrees with you, Cynthia. So Nigel is saying, I like your idea, Cynthia's idea. We all need an open-mindedness, whatever your role, whether you're in government, education. So I guess my question would now be, and I'm probably addressing this to Nigel, who has backed you up on this. My question to Nigel, if you're hearing me, my question would now be, can't policy affect attitude, or can't funding not affect attitude? Are you following me? What do you think from your experience? Nigel, are you on the call? Okay, you are okay.
I've just been unmuted. I'm here now. Sorry, I couldn't speak before. Can you ask that question again?
So you know, I asked the question, and Cynthia was like, attitude is also a very powerful driver. And I'm thinking, well, I understand that, and you're very, very correct. And obviously you agree with Cynthia. But my question is, can policy not affect attitude? Can funding not affect attitude, in your view?
I think it can. I think both of those are powerful drivers in changing people's views. But I think if people don't come into this eco-innovation or anything else with an open mind, all the funding and policy in the world won't make any difference. I think there is that individual responsibility on all of us to be open to new ideas, to thinking outside the box. And then funding and policy perhaps builds on that.
On that, okay, I see what you mean. I think that's fantastic. Okay, really good. So ultimately, attitude can be influenced, but inherently, individuals and organizations need to accept it as a responsibility, and that sense of urgency needs to be very, very clear. I think that's fantastic. Okay, I'm going to go straight to my Nigerian friends, and it gives me absolute pleasure, first and foremost, to invite Professor Chris Emokaro, okay, who would speak about eco-innovation for sustainable development in Africa, and a case study of a Center for Global Eco-Innovation at the University of Benin. Over to you, Prof. So, by the way, Professor Chris Emokaro is the co-investigator and the co-lead of the Nigerian Actuate and Recirculate projects, and also the deputy coordinator of the Center for Global Eco-Innovation at the University of Benin. Now, Cynthia, are you ready to come on for your talk? We'll come back to Chris. Cynthia, you on the call?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, can you come on for your talk now, please?
Okay, all right.
Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, okay. Give me 1 second. Okay. Can you see my screen?
It's just coming up now. Yes, we can see it. If you make it a presentation mode.
I'll do that in a second. Okay. Yeah.
That's perfect. Yes, you can proceed. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. All right. So, well, my name is Cynthia Forson, and I'm Deputy Provost here at Lancaster University, Ghana. And I'm going to be looking at eco-innovation for sustainable development in Ghana, a case study of Lancaster University, Ghana. Now, essentially, Lancaster University, Ghana is a partnership between Lancaster University and an organization called Transnational Academic Group. And it's about 6 years old and primarily delivers social science programs and computer science. So when ACAN got in touch with me, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I'm probably going to be intimidated by all these, science related eco-innovation activities that partners like University of Benin and CSIR are involved in. And the question for me was, can a social sciences-based university in Africa be engaged in eco-innovation? If the answer is yes, then how? And what are the essential parameters for doing so? So at LU Ghana, our involvement in eco-innovation and its relationship with development obviously has kind of started with, I would argue, the RECIRCULATE project. Now, Abru argues that eco-innovation is a multi-directional process, and in developing countries needs to be a joint effort of collaboration and facilitation involving government, academia, the private sector, and the society. But also argues for the importance of being aware of gender inclusion. So what have we been doing at LU Ghana? Well, as a result of the RECIRCULATE project, and the capacity building around knowledge exchange, that has kind of raised awareness of knowledge exchange generally, but also has built staff capacity in knowledge exchange mechanisms. That has led, in my view, to increased staff engagement with industry and government with regards to things like student projects. Also, the idea of co-creation and co-design in and of itself as an idea has taken hold within Lancaster University, Ghana, particularly around academics. And that has changed their practice. They have become reflective practitioners in terms of their own pedagogy and also of the content of what they teach students. So eco-innovation in, for example, marketing strategies is beginning to develop within some of the marketing modules, for example. We've also engaged in innovative teaching and assessment practices. For example, collaboration. Right now, there's a collaboration between Lancaster University Ghana and Lancaster University Leipzig in terms of teaching and assessment practices on modules that are taught, same modules that are taught across the same programs in the two campuses. And then there's been some engagement between the marketing department here and some of the waste management companies in Ghana, like Just Spong Industries, about ways in which we can collaborate and market LU Ghana, but at the same time engage with some of these industries in doing so. We've moved to a new campus in October 2021, and some of the considerations around the building as a result of the RECIRCULATE project is that the project team and the facilities team are thinking, for example, currently about solar energy for power. We've got a biodigester on campus. At the moment, it's not working, but there are discussions now around reactivation of the biodigester to power the campus, but also to provide fuel for the cafeteria that we're in. And LU Ghana has partnered with the Forestry Commission on the Green Ghana project, where Ghana government, or at least the Forestry Commission, plans on planting 5 million trees across Ghana, and we're involved in that. So I would say that apart from these, this sort of engagement with the RECIRCULATE project and how the RECIRCULATE project has kind of changed the way people are thinking and the way things are happening on the campus, I think it's also important, and being a gender scholar, this is something that I thought it would be important to raise and to discuss, that it is important in all of this and in all of this engagement in eco-innovation for sustainability and for development in Africa to consider doing all of this through a gender lens. Because that's essential if we're going to understand and reinforce eco-innovation as a driver of sustainable development in Africa. Women are clearly active agents of change, and they have their own ways of using and applying technologies across the different sectors in Africa. Clearly, women and men use and apply these technologies in different ways. And therefore, it's important for us to understand the needs of women if we are going to serve their needs as part of this eco-innovation. I'm talking about LU Ghana. And we also know that initiatives fail because women's perspectives and needs are not really fully addressed when some of these strategies are taking place. And I believe that simply fixing the numbers, this generally across Africa, i.e. increasing transformation, because women have different political agendas, they have different choices, and they see themselves differently in terms of, and they see transformation differently, and what is important for transformation and eco-innovation. This means that any engagement in growing a culture of eco-innovation across Lancaster, Ghana, must really fundamentally be a social and a political agenda rather than an agenda of just innovation or just science. So how do we ensure at LU Ghana that the gender lens is incorporated when we are developing eco-innovations? I think there are three openings or three ways in which that can be done. Eco-innovation for women, eco-innovation by women, i.e. women in science, and women in eco-innovation. And what do I mean by that? So with regard to eco-innovation for women in Africa, it's about recognizing women's specific needs and using that to bring improvements that can contribute to their levels of income, enhance quality of life for them and for their children. And studies in Africa, in terms of access to water and energy, has shown that men and women have different relationships, for example, to these issues. So it's really important to have a gender lens in the production of knowledge in eco-innovation. In other words, as a university, in producing that knowledge, we need to take into consideration what women's needs are. So I'll give you an example here, which I found and I thought was fantastic. Open fires and inefficient stoves cause harmful impacts, especially to women and children. And that impedes economic and social development in Africa. Clearly, cleaner stoves have the potential to reduce deaths from smoke-related illnesses and mitigate climate change and lower air pollution. And they can provide, obviously, new sources of livelihoods for women. Clean Cooking Alliance was established in 2010 and works with a global network to build an inclusive industry that makes clean cooking accessible to 3 billion people who live each day without it. Currently, they have around 500 stoves and 700 test results, and they work with 14 different types of fuel, from biomass to biogas and solar, as well as the more traditional coal, electricity, and alcohol. And the Alliance recognizes that women have a critical role to play across the entire clean cooking value chain, and have developed many resources to empower women along that chain. And how do they do that? It was to consider women's needs in developing products, services, etc., etc. Now, how do we do this in LU Ghana? At the moment, at the new campus, we've engaged students in the landscaping of the sports facilities, for example, to ensure ownership. And we are making sure that female students, for example, have the opportunity to contribute to this discussion before it's done, so that women, the female students' perspective and their needs are taken into consideration when we're landscaping and engaging with this Green Ghana project with the Forestry Commission. The other thing that has been taken into consideration is women's needs in conserving energy across the offices. So we've combined what women find useful, which is open floor plans, doorless offices. That has reduced the number of air conditioners that are used, for example, on each floor, has encouraged collaboration, but also enhances the security of women. So in combining women's needs and talking to women and understanding what they need on a campus, and how that can help us to contribute to the climate change agenda has been very useful to Ghana. And I believe that all of this has come about as a result of research for innovation by women in Africa. Now, this is with regard to women in science. Clearly, progress has been made in some areas. For example, now we have a lot of data across the board in terms of education, scientific careers, publications, where the wage gaps are, and work-life balance. But obviously, there are still challenges around norms and rules that restrict structural change, and obviously institutional and cultural barriers within the higher education sector itself. Potential interventions that have been talked about include gender-sensitive policies related to work-life balance, flexible working conditions, professional development, role modeling, mentoring, quotas, etc., etc. Now, for us, I love this quote, and it's a long quote, but I'll read it. And it's a testimony of Dr. Shirley Malcolm during the American Association for Advancement of Science. And she says that we have concluded that only a systemic approach will move us forward with regard to gender equality, by the way. We know of many things that work, but not at scale. We know of many things that work, but not for all groups. We know that institutions have barriers baked into their structures, but the nature of each institution's challenges is different. We know that institutions have to want to change, and that they can be incentivized through deployment of carrots and sticks. We know that funding agencies can play a major role in incentivizing change, and so too can the STEM and higher education communities themselves. So what have we done at Lancaster, Ghana? One, what we have tried to do is support women in science through the Women's Innovators Network for Africa. And that was developed under the RECIRCULATE project, and is a network of women across Africa, particularly women academics, women entrepreneurs, women in science, and providing support and information through webinars, through face-to-face encounters, and through general knowledge exchange and conversations to support the work that they're doing. We've also been engaged in capacity building, as most of you on this call will know, through the stimulating entrepreneurial thinking among scientists, and a number of African women in a lot of the institutions that are represented on this call have been involved in those workshops. We are also trying to understand women in science, and at the moment we've got a PhD student at Lancaster University who's investigating issues around women in the knowledge exchange ecosystem in sub-Saharan Africa. And then finally, women in eco-innovation in Africa. And this is about encouraging and supporting the role of women in the eco-innovation system. And we all know that female entrepreneurship is a driver in economic development in Africa, and particularly in Africa, where women entrepreneurs and women business owners outnumber men business owners, and it's the only continent where that is true. Therefore, it's important to understand women's work patterns, what their needs are as entrepreneurs, but also as workers. And we need to understand the issues that are faced by women's micro and small-sized enterprises. There's issues around how these women get advice, training, and what their access is to ICTs. So, let's take an example of a woman who's an entrepreneur who, through support, advice, and engagement, has developed a really innovative business. In 2014, a South African woman decided to grow organic vegetables, but obviously as she grew them, the chickens were eating the vegetables. So she devised a system of vegetable growing using recycled plastic bags in a portable vertical structure. The system also solved the issue related to pesticide usage and uses a fraction of the water needed for conventional agriculture. At the moment, as we speak, Mgibe Farming, Organics and Training Institute is a nationwide network that is involved in commercial vegetable production, mobilization and capacitating of other agricultural cooperatives, and the use of innovative and advanced agricultural techniques, conducting commercial agriculture and food security workshops, and building a network of partnerships. And there are currently 34 cooperatives that are involved in this project. Now, this is because a woman started a small business, but was engaged and supported and helped to develop and to grow this business that is, in my view, eco-innovative, particularly around water usage and the use of pesticides. So at LU Ghana, through the participation in RECIRCULATE, what we've been trying to do at the research level is understand, for example, women's eco-innovation related knowledge networks in the shea butter industry in Kumasi and Tamale. In order to, so I believe that when we understand what is going on, then we can provide the support that is required. Another piece of research that we've been involved in is the role of market queens in waste management in markets in Accra. And finally, we have been looking at the cultural barriers to female entrepreneurs' legitimacy in terms of eco-innovation in Africa. And I do believe that in engaging in these different ways of supporting women in eco-innovation, although Lancaster University Ghana in and of itself is not, doesn't run science programs and therefore is unable in ways related to, for example, CSIR or University of Benin, and doesn't have an eco-innovation center. We are contributing from a social science perspective in using eco-innovation as a developmental tool and as a way of sustaining development and empowering women across Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. You know, I know you began by saying that when I contacted you, you felt intimidated. I would like to say categorically, anyway, from my perspective anyway, that I actually believe that Africa's problem is not a physical science or natural science issue. I think it's principally a social science issue. I even believe that the issue of climate change is not a natural science issue because the science is clear. Temperatures are rising. The reason folks are gathering in Glasgow is because of communication and folks doing what they promised to do. That is fundamentally a social science issue. So that's my point. The role of social science in making our world a better place is absolutely non-negotiable. So my point is, I don't think there's a need for any intimidation because you are at the center of this discussion. And that was an absolute incredible presentation. I know folks might have responses or comments to make. I'd like to just hold your horses for a second. I'm going to call on our last speaker to wrap this up, and which is Professor Chris Emokaro. Talk about the Benin case study very briefly. Over to you, Prof. Could you please share Chris's screen? That was really, really good, Cynthia. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, just a second.
Thank you.
Yeah, ready.
Yeah, Chris, you good to go?
Chris, can you unmute your mic, please? He is there, Akan. He's just...
Yeah. I think his mic is muted. Hello, Chris. Chris, are you on the call? He's wanting you to unmute his mic. He just sent me a text. Alan.
No, he needs to do it himself. I can't do it. He's down here as Prof. Chris Emakaro guest.
No, sorry, yeah. Oh, wow. Well, you see, you sometimes can't plan for these sorts of logistical issues. I guess most of us are quite used to these sorts of interruptions since COVID began. So just waiting. Chris, you're able to unmute yourself. I think he's insisting he cannot unmute his mic for some reason, Alan, which is strange.
He is, yeah, that is strange because he is down as a presenter, but I can't.
Because he's telling me, he says only organizers can unmute. I think Nigel had the same issue. You had to unmute him. So can you unmute Chris?
No, he is down as a presenter, so he should be able to unmute his mic. Hang on. Let me see if I can make him an attendee again and then make him a presenter again. And let's see if we can do that.
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, it's our last speaker for the day. I wanted us to get a feel for the University of Benin case study, which I think is a very interesting one. Yeah, so, and I think after that we can have a bit of interaction with the guest. I think maybe a few questions, and then we can call it a day. So just be patient, just briefly.
Okay, I've allowed his mic again, so I've made him a.
I mean, I wish I knew what was in the presentation. I would have presented it, but it's better coming from him because they've done incredible work. I can assure you. So, Chris, can you try again? Are you able to unmute now? So Alan is not working because he just told me now he's tried again, it can happen. So what I wanted to do is this. I do apologize because we're running past time now. University of Benin already had a series of questions, which is almost like a generic questions around the subject matter of eco-innovation. So I'd like us to go straight to answer a few of those specific questions for interaction, and then we can wrap it up because we can't take the presentation right now. If Chris cannot mute his mic, we can't hear him. I don't think there's anybody else in the room who can present that presentation on his behalf. So I do apologize for that. What we'll do though is send that presentation to everybody who has attended the webinar. So just bear in mind that will happen. So apologies again, but I'd like us to have a bit more interaction before we proceed. So if you go back to your chat section, you see question 5 and 6, please. So, and it's just a few questions to get some conversations going in the room before we call it a day. And the first question is, so if you respond to these, you would see those responses projected live on the screen. So the first question is, what industries now it's a very it's a very specific question, but I would imagine this would be based on individual peculiarities. But let me get a feel for the room. That's why I'm asking this. So in your mind, though, because we've spoken about local eco-innovation investment, and you can act, or rather think global, but act local. My question is this. In your perspective, from an African point of view, what industries or sectors in Africa is most in need of local eco-innovation investment? What do you think? So we have energy, agriculture, ICT, water, and other. So if you're choosing other, I want to know who's choosing other and which other ones are you thinking? So it seems like energy. So please keep voting. Let's keep voting. Okay. So what industries or sectors in your mind in Africa you think is in most need of local eco-innovation investments? So water is topping that list. That's interesting. So if there's anybody in the room who's chosen water, could you raise up your hand and let me know? I'd like you to tell us why have you chosen water in your view? So I know Dr. Obotibanga has chosen agriculture, but let me ask, is anybody chosen water, and why have you chosen water? So whose hand is up? Kirk, why have you chosen water, sir?
Well, I mean, I think I'm thinking about it's linked to human health issues, you know. Okay. So we know that contaminated water accounts for significant numbers of childhood illnesses and death, of course. I think, you know, we're lucky in the UK to have potable water that we draw from our taps. That's you know, extremely rare in many countries around the world. So, but from an African perspective, of course, I think, and what we've done in RECIRCULATE particularly, the link to human health and disease is a significant one. Okay.
So now, so I get that very clearly. So Michael made a good point here. Michael says water is a more primary need for both human and environmental well-being, and it also underpins agriculture, which I think is a very, very powerful point. I think in some sense, Michael is supporting what Kirk is saying. But then Priscilla has chosen agriculture. Priscilla, can you tell us why you chosen agriculture, please? Priscilla, could somebody unmute Priscilla?
Yeah.
So Priscilla chosen agriculture, and obviously so has Emokaro, Chris Emokaro, who was to present, but because of the logistic issue around the voice, we couldn't hear him actually present. But he's chosen agriculture. On the list, on the screen, energy seems to top the list. I mean, obviously relatively higher in a sense. And I wondered who was chosen energy. Can I hear from you, please? Just raise up your hand and they would unmute you. I want to hear from somebody who has picked energy and somebody who has picked agriculture. I was calling Priscilla earlier on. Okay. Alan, any hands up?
There's no hands.
Yeah, someone's hand is up, I think.
Nigel's put his
okay,
hand up.
Nigel, what have you chosen and why?
I'm not sure I should be answering it, but since nobody else put their hand up, it just struck me that this whole session is focused around COP26. And I'm not saying there aren't many other important aspects where eco-innovation can make a huge contribution. But in the context of COP26, I think we've really got to look towards the energy sector as a key component.
Okay. So basically, you are saying you maybe energy in some sense because of that focus on COP26 and the fact that but doesn't agriculture also contribute immensely to climate change?
It does, but you only let me choose one.
Oh, I see.
If I could have chosen more than one, I think I would have put agriculture there for exactly that reason. It is clearly really important.
That's fantastic. So I think in some sense, each of these sectors anyway, in one form or the other, does contribute to carbon emissions, and obviously to the issue of climate change, and it's a link with COP26. I think it's a question about within the African context, which of these contribute the most. Maybe that's a perspective to look at it, and how do you innovate locally towards the production of maybe new products and services that meet challenges while still addressing these particular issues. It's a good question. So I think we can move
I guess if we come back to COP26, I suspect people attending that meeting would say, if you don't sort energy, if you don't sort greenhouse gas emissions, then agriculture and water are fundamentally challenged anyway.
I see what you mean. And I think I agree with you, actually. I do. So next question, please. So, I mean, it's a yes or no question, but you never know in these things. So that's why I'm asking the question. So I guess the question is, within the context of climate change and obviously COP26, is eco-innovation right now ideal for Africa under the prevailing circumstances? Remember that Kirk said originally that Africa doesn't actually contribute a lot, maybe very, very, very negligibly to climate change. But Africa is been identified as one of the most vulnerable regions to the impacts of climate change. So with prevailing circumstances, just after COVID and economies kind of nosediving and kind of struggles, I mean, currencies kind of having some powerful inflations. The question is eco-innovation ideal in these current circumstances? What are you thinking? Okay. Actually, I would be interested to find somebody who says no, because I would like to find out why. So everybody's overwhelmingly saying yes, it's ideal. Eco-innovation is a good subject matter of discussion. But I would be interested to find out if anybody thinks the contrary. Please keep voting. Let me see in the chat. Anybody said no, Alan? So Priscilla says that she believes that there's actually a lot of untapped opportunities in the sector through the value chain. Chris says there is no better time than now in Africa for eco-innovation. I think I'm inclined to agree with you, Chris. So there's an overwhelming agreement in the room that it is ideal to focus on eco-innovation in respect to climate change now and not tomorrow, especially if the continent is the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. And as a matter of fact, we're already feeling this already. I think I was watching a short video yesterday, and the amount of flooding in locations that never used to flood is quite alarming. I mean, and many impacts on different levels. So next question, okay? And I'm asking this question because I had a feel of what University of Benin was going to present. The question is, what is the most important to bridging the gaps between academia and industry? What do you think? What is the most important to bridging that gap between academia and industry? What is the most important to bridging the gaps? And I guess, why is it very important? Like maybe look at the question is, why is it very important to bridge those gaps in academia and industry? Which I think is what University of Benin talk was going to allude to. And the fact that the younger generations are the ones who will carry the message for the impact we need in terms of focus, of policy, resources, time, energy on combating climate change. And interestingly, it seems to be the last. So right now we're seeing research impact, funding, innovation. Can I ask Kirk to come in here? Kirk, what are you seeing on the screen, and what do you think is happening here?
Well, there's obviously a variety of opinions in the room. I think in some ways I'm a little surprised that no one's ticked on youth employability.
That's what I was thinking.
You know, I think youth, whether they're in the educational sector or not, offers innovation opportunities to drive this relationship between academia and industry. We know at Lancaster and elsewhere with CG Nigeria, of course, that the youth, the students are a very important element to people like me engaging with the private sector, because the students are that sort of linkage, the people that are involved in the activities to actually make it work. Okay. But of course that also relates to me, at least in terms of research impact. The research that's been generated by the collaboration between university and the companies will help to deliver at some point in the future, hopefully, something that's very meaningful and has benefits for society or the environment.
I'm going to call on Cynthia. Cynthia, I see your hand is up. And any comments, please, on the subject matter?
Yes, actually, I was going to say that, when the question was asked about which sector was most important
Yes,
in terms of eco-innovation. I don't know whether I clicked on my response or not, but I had said, actually, I think the most important, can you hear me?
Yeah, very clearly, yes.
Okay, the most important, because I chose other. And yeah, the most important sector for me is education.
Oh, I see.
And that's because I do believe, and in line with my my argument around attitudes and open-mindedness, I do believe that one of the biggest issues in Africa is the education. Look, if we invest eco-innovation funding into education across the board, half our social problems would be solved, half our health problems would be solved, half our problems in agriculture would be solved, half our problems, because a lot of it is around ignorance, around attitudes, lack of knowledge, et cetera, et cetera. And I do really believe that if we invest in education, ensuring that the majority of the population is in education, eco-innovation will follow.
I think that's very powerful.
To struggle in that area.
I think that's a very, very powerful discussion.
At the moment, we're not investing enough in education.
Michael, I like your point you made on the chat. Are you able to speak, Michael? I'd like you to actually make the point again for everyone to hear, because I think it's a very, very powerful point you just made, respect to COP26 and its predominance of greenhouse gases mitigation. Michael, are you on the call? Could you say something, please?
Just unmute. Let me just unmute. Don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go on, Michael. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just that, you know, I'm based in Lancaster, by the way, so it's kind of interesting. It's just that if you, I mean, the focus of COP, I mean, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to refer to the 9 planetary boundaries that the Rockstrom Institute spent a long time identifying, and only one of those is climate change. You know, and so if you take something like COP, which is focused on reducing the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, it's going to be looking at existing systems and how to painfully transition those to more sustainable systems, and that's its focus. Whereas a lot of the innovative solutions that are necessary for the other things, like biosphere degradation and water quality and those things, they directly impact. They impact much more directly on human health and human well-being and environmental health and well-being, and the amount of a particular gas in the atmosphere is a pretty abstract concept for most people. So if you're tackling those direct things and improving the quality of life by building more smarter, sustainable circular systems, you will by default be using less resources, producing less climate change gases, etc., etc. But because of the focus of the climate change agenda's focus on reducing the gases, I strongly suspect that those projects are given less weight and less precedence when it comes to looking for solutions. So the solutions tend to be, you know, still increasingly top down and big fix, whereas probably the majority of the change is going to come from a sort of a network of small projects which are interacting and building from the bottom up.
So it feels to me, Michael, that I think which is what Nigel was saying in response to you. It feels then therefore that there's an inherent bias, as a matter of fact, on the focus around reducing emissions, but actually Africa's got no conversation in that space. Africa is on the other side of the chain, because Africa's own is a focus on creating new innovative products and services that doesn't increase emissions, which is why it's almost a biased focus in a sense.
Yeah, can I just say something there as well, which is, and I say this as an external observer from Lancaster looking in, but Africa could flip this narrative around and it could say, well, we're more than doing our part in reducing climate change gases because we hardly produce any per capita already. So we've ticked that box. So we're going to move on and take center stage in terms of the innovative solutions.
Which is the reason why the president of the African Development Bank says that Africa is probably the continent, so the most vulnerable continent to impact of climate change, that contributes the less amounts to carbon emissions globally has the biggest economic opportunity to tap into the space of climate change because we are way down the curve, which I think for me is quite fascinating. I mean, we can go on and on. I'm sure many people want to give talks and give responses. It's a very fascinating conversation.
I'm going to turn my mic off, but I would just add one more element to that, which is infrastructure. The West is saddled with trying to retrofit a legacy 19th, 20th century infrastructure, whereas Africa, to some ways, because it has minimal infrastructure, can really build the new infrastructure from the ground up very quickly.
Absolutely agree. I think just to wrap up, just to pick up a point, Ibanga, Dr. Obot says, with employability, when we are turning waste to wealth, the innovation is capable of creating more jobs, and that's very, very true. And aligning our young generation towards these new opportunities, I think is fantastic. Now we can go on, and I do apologize. We a little bit past time now, and I want to thank you everybody for the contribution. Thank you so much to Kirk. Thanks to Cynthia, to Francis, to Patricia. And obviously, thanks as well to Emokaro. Obviously, we couldn't hear you speak, but we'll make that presentation available to everybody on the call. If you look at the chat section, there is a link there. I'd like you to please click on the link, fill in your name, your email address, if you want access or to be sent certificate of attendance or participation from this webinar. And ultimately, also, please sign up to our monthly newsletters where you are kept up to date with new developments, projects, opportunities, conversations happening in this space. And I want to hand it over to Kirk to wrap it up for us. Over to you, boss.
Thanks very much, Akan. I'd just like to start by thanking all of the presenters for their really interesting and thought-provoking presentations. It's a shame that Prof. Chris couldn't contribute, but as Akan said, it's going to be made available to folks anyway. So so thanks to presenters. Thanks very much to the audience for tuning in and listening and actually contributing so effectively and to the conversation as well. It's been really very good to see. I just like to say that there is no easy solution to climate change. We know that, but it is one of the most significant challenges that we are facing currently. And any contribution that we can make to mitigating against that is well worth considering and actually acting on as well. And we hope that the funded projects that we've talked about will make a difference and will continue to make a difference as we move forward into the future as well. I'd just like to say that Akan and I will be attending COP26 in November, where we'll continue this discussion in the African Pavilion with the government of Ghana. And I think, like Akan, I am really looking forward to that engagement as well. And of course, it may be, I'm sure it'll be possible to tune into that event as well. So thanks again, everyone. And I'll hand back to Akan to finish off. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Absolutely fantastic. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to Nigel for the contribution. Thanks to Michael. Thanks to Cynthia. I can see some incredible names here. And please try and engage with us. If you want to be part of our network, please just send a message in the chat, or when you fill the form, just make it very clear, and we can join into the network. We have many things happening and many conversations still ongoing, and we look forward to more engagement as we proceed. On that note, have a gorgeous day and a lovely weekend, and I'll see everyone soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Akan.